Dobro večer svima i hvala što ste došli ovdje. Nadam se da ćete nešto naučiti. I to je sve što ću reći na hrvatskom, prezentacija na engleskom. Mislili smo da će biti možda neko ko ne govori hrvatski, ali isto iskreno ću vam reći, pošto sam radila vani i dan danas, uglavnom su mi klijenti vani, lakše mi je prezentirati na engleskom. Nadam se da vam je to ok. Every small team, sad sam confused samu sebe. Every small team I believe, can learn something or take something away from corporate world. Corporate world, be bad or good, whatever your experience is, there is definitely things that can be taken away from it. So today, I am not going to talk to you about corporate frameworks. I am not going to do corporate talk. The purpose or the goal of this presentation today is for each one of you to hopefully take something with you that you can take away and implement straight away, either as an employee or as an employer in your day-to-day work. I think that this slide says all about me, personally and professionally. Yes, I am originate from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I then fell in love with a man in a skirt who kept me in Scotland for 30 years of my life, until I decided to drag him over to true love of my life, which is Adriatic Sea. Sorry, Alan. So that's personally. Professionally, I've also spent my 20 years of career as business consultant / business analyst, working across borders, across different cultures, and mostly being that connection between people, processes, and I'm not going to say technology, but delivery, which is, I guess, an important part of every work, regardless what we do. I've learned in those 20 years quite a lot, but what I've seen from working with teams and clients and from observing is that misunderstanding often causes chaos in teams. And why that is? Because misunderstanding happens because assumptions are made about cultures, about people, about the way that we operate or the way that we work. I also learned that those misunderstandings can be easily solved simply through clarity, not through big frameworks, not through big four speak. It's just by creating clarity for people. Bear with me a second. You all thought you're just going to have a beer. So am I. What's up? Jokes aside, that wasn't me. That was a real life situation. That was Richard, a real person. When I worked as a consultant in a software development company, we worked for a public sector client. And on that project, we were based on site most of the time, Monday to Friday. One Friday afternoon, we turned up a client site doing what we do best, consulting, facilitating, solving problems for our client. In the afternoon, the client's team started chilling out, pulling beers just like you did from the table, and packing boxes. But it wasn't only client that was doing that. It was our Richard. Richard also decided that that was okay. That was an okay thing to do. He sat on the chair, and I didn't have a desk nearby, but he sat on the chair, opened a beer, and he put his feet up on the desk. As you can imagine, me and my colleagues looked at each other, rolled our eyes, and thinking, did he really just do that? Now, Richard was our out-of-uni consultant. And Richard didn't do anything wrong. That wasn't bad behavior from Richard's side. What happened here is that system failed Richard. Why? When Richard joined, we explained to him about software, we talked to him about different clients that we have and what we do. But we didn't brief him and we didn't tell him about internal culture and difference between internal culture, how we behave in the office, and how we behave on our client sites. So that's why I'm saying here behavior doesn't come from personality. It comes from lack of clarity and the behavior. So Richard didn't really feel company here. We as a company or as his colleagues didn't help him or didn't help him understand what real working life looks like. The reason I was saying that because I wanted to give you a real life story to hopefully bring it closer to home so you can understand the rest of it. You know, I think, you know, for me the biggest difference I see in corporates and in small teams is behavior, and there is nothing wrong with chilled out atmosphere, with relaxed atmosphere within offices, smaller offices, but we all have clients. We all, most of the time, work with international clients. There's different cultures, different expectations. And I'm sure you all think I hate corporate. It's slow, it's bureaucratic, simply nightmare. I don't. I really like corporate. I have to admit, and the reason I like it because most of the time, what I like about it, it provides clarity. But yes, it's slow, but it does provide clarity. Decisions do take time. However, sometimes taking time to make certain decisions is actually beneficial. But what's really good and what's important part in small teams is speed. That everything happens quickly. You do things very quickly. You do things on the go. But within that speed, what happens is that you lose clarity, and you actually think by doing something really quick, you will get that task off your desk quicker. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes speed slows you down. Why? It's because we don't take time to do retrospective or to stop and think why are we doing something rather than just doing it and getting it over and done with. I mean, I'm sure many of you at home, simple example, have tried to do something really quickly. You're rushing to get out of the door. You try and do something, and then something else happens. You draw a bottle of milk, and then you spend time actually, in that madness, trying to get something done quicker. You actually spend more time reworking it, and that's exactly where problem with speed comes. The rework that it could create. So sometimes, rather than your speed being 100 miles an hour, means in Scotland mode, or 100 kilometers an hour, take it down to 80 and use that. Helps, it's using that 20% left over of the speed for something else. For example, knowledge sharing within the team, capturing down if you were solving a problem for the client, if you were fixing a bug in a system, capturing that down, how you've done it, what problem did you come across, what can you learn from it, because it will help you next time. Because guarantee you will come through same problems over and over again. Another example, you all use Slack. mostly, I imagine, Slack is great. I use it too. However, sometimes as an example, you will send somebody a quick Slack message saying, can you please deal with this for me? That's it. You get a response, yeah, no problem. What happens here that you ask somebody to do something, you're thinking, I need that today. Other person doesn't think the same way as you. The person on the other side is thinking, you need that within a week. I have plenty of time to do it. Also, what happens, it's urgent. That task may be urgent to you, but for other person, it may not be urgent. You haven't clarified that. You haven't provided clarity and said the importance of the task, when do you need it done by, and the reasons for it. And going back to corporate, what often happens, Slack is not often used, good old Outlook. And as much as I think Slack is great, it's much quicker, not teaching you tools here, but just as an example, why perhaps corporate use more Outlook rather than Slack, because sending email to somebody, it actually makes you're more likely to stop and think, what am I saying to here, and provide better, clearer instructions rather just a quick chat. I need this or something like that. So again, it's just speed is fine, but stopping down to create clarity and to have a quick conversation with somebody and just explaining what is it that you need to do rather than just firing off a message that may not be received in the way that you think it. And coming back, I have to give you this example. Sorry, Alan and Tony, but this will involve you. It seems everything is revolving around beer today. This evening, Alan and I arrived. Tony's fixing presentation, and he's thinking, right, great, Alan's here. He can help me speed things up. And he says to Alan, can you grab beers and bring them down? What does Alan do? He goes upstairs, wherever he goes to bring beer, he brings 2 bottles. He comes down and Tony's looking at him thinking, what? I meant full box, Alan. So Alan goes back up and brings back the box. If Tony had provided more clarity maybe and be clearer of what his expectations are and what he meant by beer, it could have been done much quicker. Enough of clarity and speed. So, what can be done better, or what to resolve some of those things? Process. Again, I love processes because I think they serve a purpose. But most people, when you say process, they shake, they don't like it, it freaks them out. They think process means bureaucracy and it creates problems and it stops people rather than helps them do something. But it actually isn't. How many times, as an employer, as an employer, have you had the same conversation twice? Has it happened to any of you? Have you ever had to repeat something twice? If you have a process, or you have a need for process. So rather than having to repeat something over and over again, if that happens, especially if you're leading or managing teams, think about it. Create a small notification, one-pager, whatever it might be, to actually clarify that, because it's going to give you more time in the end and less questions and żuganie about same thing over and over again. It's also removing decisions from your head. What simple processes or simple agreements, whatever we call them, also do is provide clarity for the teams. For example, in corporations, when you arrive, I'm sure it happens in smaller teams, I'm not sure I know, but a slightly different way. when you start, you know exactly, I have so many holidays. I know when I'm allowed to take holidays, when I'm not allowed to take holidays. There's peak times in business when you're working with clients that you're not allowed to do. You also know what happens if you're sick. What happens if somebody dies? Unfortunately, all of these things happen. So some of these simple processes that create frustrations and ambiguity in the teams can be put down on a piece of paper and communicated with everybody, and everybody knows where they stand and what they do in those type of situations. Also, it takes away from negotiations that sometimes often happen in small teams. Everything can be negotiated at any point of time. Yes, negotiations are good, they happen, but they can't happen on a daily basis. Also, if you don't have things articulated within the teams, one person is going to ask you a question, you're going to give them one answer. Somebody else is going to ask you the same question. 10 days after, you may give them a different answer. And what happens? Teams talk. They get pissed off. They get annoyed that they're getting different answers, different treatments. And then the problem starts within the team, unintentionally. So creating processes just to get away, or small agreements just to get away from ambiguities, definitely pays in the long run. Talking about ambiguity, just deliberately it goes from that way over here. A couple of weeks ago, I was going for oral surgery just down the road at Krezine. So what happens? Can I move here? Long hallway. I'm arriving. I come here. There is an information desk and big notice. This is not a desk for oral surgery. Report to room 5. I move, few more steps over. Oh, there's a wall and another sign on it. Oral surgery, arrow, room 5. You don't need to go to the report to the information desk. Guess what? I was already at the information desk. Okay, I move few more steps. What happens? Please don't knock on the door. What do? I arrived at room 5 and it tells me not to knock on the door. Somebody here thought, great, we've provided information, we created clarity for people where they're going and how they need to act or where they need to do. But does that give you clarity? It doesn't. It actually just creates confusion and stress. You're already stressed, arriving at the hospital, you don't know what you're doing, where you are, and then you expect to get some valuable information and you don't, you just get confusion. So intentional communication in whatever instructions you give is so important. And going back to Richard, if we didn't give Richard just a rough indication of what's expected, what client he is going to work for, and we spent a little bit more time to articulate it more about our ways of working, and especially ways of working with a client, we may have saved Richard. But most importantly, we may have saved culture that presented to our clients. Working as a small team or any team, we all have our own small habits that are fine, but depending how we act and how we create those habits internally, they often present in exactly same way outside to our clients. So we do need to think, however, relaxed atmosphere may be, and within our teams, we need to distinguish that working within the team, working within your own office, and what that looks like working with the outside world. But also, it's not just about culture. It's actually about it is about your brand and what those behaviors that you carry outside with you, from your desk to the outside world. What does that tell you about the company that you're working for, and how you're presenting that brand? And that, moments like that, what Richard did, make a difference and stick in people's mind. We made a laugh out of that at the client desk, but it could have cost us reputation with a really important client. And let's not forget, public sector client. Oops. I don't know where I'm going now. I'm lost.
You need speed.
I need speed. Last one. There is one more. There we go. A few questions to take away from you. So before I go into those few questions, there's 3 things that I would like you to hopefully remember and take away that might help you. People equals clarity. Clear instructions, clear expectations. Process it's not about bureaucracy, it's about guiding somebody through their work. And communication. Communication creates trust between clients, between teams, generally between people. So, I'm not expecting you to take away, to answer any of these questions now, but I would like you to take those questions with you and have a moment to reflect. Do you provide enough clarity for your team? If you were an employee of your own company, or if you are an employee, do you have clear understanding of expectations? Client expectations, the team expectations, or your boss's expectations? And also, what would change if you implemented some of those lessons I shared? You can, if you do want to take that away, if you do think about it, I would actually love to hear if anybody did stop for a moment to think about it, and if anything changed, and if any of these actually made things better for you and your teams. This is me. I didn't want to give you at the very beginning my CV and debrief of 50 years of my life, 51 years of my life. But if you want to know more, if you want to have a chat, if you want to grab a coffee, it doesn't need to be a tech coffee, you can reach me. I'm always happy to have a conversation, or feel free to scroll through my LinkedIn to learn more about where I was working and what I was doing. Thank you. Questions from anybody? Reflections?
Yeah, I have one question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so quick question. Why did you become the person who became today? Because what actually drove you to become a teacher for communication about teams and stuff like that? What actually motivated you to become the person that you
So the question from the audience is, what motivated me to become the person that I am today and to teach about communications, about things that I was talking about? What motivated me is probably frustration. I worked with so many frustrations and also the drive and to pass the knowledge that I have learned to others to actually make their lives easier, hopefully. And when I say frustrations, I've worked with so many different teams globally. I mentioned corporations. Yes, I worked in corporation, but let's face it, every corporation has a small team and they all work in a different ways. And there's a huge difference between leadership within those teams. So you could work, under the same roof, under the same umbrella, but there's very different styles of how people communicate, how people are treated. And I like clarity. That's how I work the best. And I also think that's how the best way that I can deliver the best results and quickest results is by knowing exactly or clarifying what is actually needed. So it's what motivates me. It's those frustrations, it's those learnings, it's working with different people, with different cultures, with different organizations, and actually seeing what works and what doesn't work. And you think, why not actually share that knowledge? And I think, you may think some of these things that I've told you today are just common sense. They are. But what's common sense to me? It may not be common sense to you, or it may be different common sense. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Any other questions or comments? Oh.
I think it might be worthwhile to articulate more. When you mention, obviously, you've got your CV and everything like that. I think the audience would be good for them to know in terms of, because you're probably keeping this low key as well, who you've worked for. And you've worked for premier companies in Glasgow. You've worked for National Health Scotland. So it's kind of you're almost underselling yourself in terms of who you've actually worked for. I think for the audience here, you've worked for companies that are 2,000 to 3,000 people. You've had staff under your remit where you've worked with, you have over 50 people. Let's say you're managing them all. You had a nickname. You might want to tell everyone your nickname for the company as well.
Okay. Tony, do you have a spare bed for Alan? Alan here is basically asking me just to give audience more background about me and my experience and the companies I worked for. You're right, Alan is right. I am modest. I don't like talking about these things. Also, I must say, it's actually not with my move to Croatia. All those experiences that I've had that I thought would be great to bring here, they actually haven't done me a favor. They almost kept me back, but I think they kept me back because people are sometimes frightened of my experience, which is really an annoying thing. In terms of companies that I worked for, let's go back to Richard. It's my favorite company that I ever worked for, and he always will be. So the company in question here is Kana Software Development. What we did, it was developing CRM systems for public and private sectors. Why I love that? Because we truly worked as a team, we truly helped each other, and I've learned so much in that company. I mean, my career wouldn't have been the way it was if it wasn't for that company. And the reason is that there was, so many really young, talented people that just knew the job really well. And what Alan's saying there, my nickname, this will tell you all. They all call me Mama B. So it's not that bad. I had worse nicknames from Alan. They call me Mama B. Why? Because I was the oldest person there. But it didn't bother me. I was never the person who there is people who, have all this experience, who have experience, and are slightly older, actually feel, oh, I'm better than you. I'm not having a 25-year-old being my manager or telling me what to do. Not me. To me, that doesn't matter. For me, all it matters is what are you like as a leader? What are you like as a person? And, are you actually helping me to do the job that I need to do or to develop? So that's Kana's story. And actually, when I'm talking about Kana, I'll just mention about Richard as well. He may have started on a bad leg, but Richard today is lead architect for Salesforce. So very successful career, and he's also a dad of 2 little twins. So Richard has done pretty well in his career. So one company, other ones are slightly bigger. I worked for University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, University of Strathclyde. I'm not sure if any of you have heard. Hopefully you have, because it's one of the biggest universities and most thought about, not just in UK, but worldwide, especially for engineering. I also worked for good old NHS. So NHS is National Healthcare in Scotland. That was interesting. That was my probably first, apart from the clients, when I worked for Kana, that was my first probably job in a true public sector environment. Didn't last long. Do you know why? Because I was lacking speed. It was too slow. I wanted to go 100 miles an hour. They weren't ready for it. They were going at 20. It wasn't for me. I wanted to faster paced environments. I also worked for, I can't even remember, who else did I work for? I worked for Ashurst. Ashurst, also close to my heart, is a global legal firm worldwide. I worked for them in their IT department as a business consultant, worked on some pretty major global change programs, cultural change programs, reorganizations, working closely with partners, which is pretty scary stuff. I remember one time in our London office, we were looking to implement knowledge management platform. And I was tasked to run a workshop with the partners. And it was pretty terrifying, partners, imagine them, London people, suited and booted. And there is me, little refugee from Bosnia and Herzegovina, in the massive little office in London in front of those partners, telling them what to do and what not to do. It was pretty scary, but it was also pretty rewarding. That job also got me to our Australian offices to run the same workshops with partners across there. But going back to Kana again, when I worked there, I also worked for, I said we worked on the client side, but I worked for some pretty major companies within that. I worked for HIP, but not HIP here. It was Scottish Electricity. What are they called? Basically like help. That was one of our clients. I worked for Barclays Bank, implementing or leading the implementation and workshops for them and process improvement exercises as well. I worked for Department of Work and Pensions. I also had a stand actually with Scottish Government. That was through NHS because they worked really closely on national digital transformation programs. But my claim to fame project is Gibson Guitars. So that was a project through Kana as well, based over in Eindhoven. And that actually project is claim to fame, 2 different things. One reason, because it is Gibson Guitars. I mean, I just remember turning up in the office with those, really cool sound rooms with Gibson guitars all over the walls. It was brilliant. But that was one of the quickest projects I ever worked for and quickest deliveries. Why? because we had decision makers close in our workshops, right through our deliverables. So we had speed, we were moving really quickly because decisions were moved quickly. I mean, I could be here all day telling you about all of these experiences, but Tony. Yeah. Do you know, Tony, it's actually, so Tony here is asking me dark side of corporation. There is some, I will think about something, I'm sure, but I do struggle to tell you dark sides because I must say, I must have been lucky, or maybe it's the person that I am, that I just adapt in any environment, that I didn't have problems. But, some examples, and that was probably more, sometimes I actually wonder whether that's relating to corporation or whether that's relating to public sectors. It's the slow decision makings, and actually projects, what happens because accountability is watered down. And projects sometimes can just go on forever and ever and ever, and they actually never come to a closure. You never just say, okay, I've delivered that, I can move to something else, I can move to different projects. And obviously it's politics as well, but you have politics everywhere, corporations or small agencies or anywhere. But I mean, that's as darkest as it goes. I mean, I can't think of anything now, but my experience mostly was good. Go.
I think I can imagine that slide about Richard, and it says your behavior does not come from your personality, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that behavior comes from set rules of company culture, so-called nowadays, and that the team members should leave their personality at the door of the company?
No, absolutely not. What that sentence is saying that Richard didn't do what he did, putting his feet up on the desk in client side, because he has a bad personality. That's what that's saying, not because of his personality or the way he is. It's because of his behavior, and because we, as a company or as his team, didn't guide him to say. I mean, Richard thought rightly so. I mean, he didn't think there was anything wrong, by doing so. Otherwise, if he did, he probably wouldn't have done it. So I don't think that. I haven't had that experience to actually leave your personality at home. But one thing that, again, maybe it's. Or what I liked about corporations, sorry, Tony, I'm trying to think about bad things, maybe we'll come to it, but what I liked about it, I knew when I walk through doors, when I'm giving the laptop, when I'm doing my onboarding, I knew I'd come to a place where actually it's exchange between various different professional people. I've not walked into the family. One thing that I really don't agree with this we're family in small teams. Let's face it, we don't go to work to create family, do we? We actually go to work to escape from our family and to go back and feed our family. And also by thinking we are family, we are friendly, we are all of this. Sometimes we need to be careful with that as well, because sometimes what happens in that kind of environment, you could think, well, I'm here, we are a family, yeah, but what am I doing? I am feeding my boss's lifestyle. Seriously? I mean, you wouldn't really think about that in corporation. You're not there to feed anybody's lifestyle. You're there as a professional person. You have a job to do. You're there to deliver. Again, not my experience.
Sitting behind.
you don't.
Yeah.
He's one of them.
He doesn't have a corporation. Sorry, there was a question.
Can you share any techniques around actually persuading people to stop and do? So think about processes, write them down, try to organize their ways of work. Because when you come, especially my experience is when you work with corporations, you started your story the same way. No one has time. So they don't have time to do the job, not even think about making their life easier, and at the end they end up losing a lot of time instead of working as agreed or just stop for a moment. So how do you, for example, talk to some management leadership about getting the time for the team to actually stop and think about a bit of process that would help them be more productive?
Yeah, I think for me that's when it comes to those early stages, or being business consultant, business analyst, is important part of doing that. And the reason I say that also discovery as part of any project is again important part. Why? Because as part of that, that's when you secure buy-in, and that's when you can make a real difference, because in that aspect you can actually you can create say agreement or whatever, or you can specifically say that for you to implement something or to do your job, you have some prerequisites that need to be satisfied, and one of them is to have availability of people. Unless you have people to communicate with, to tell you what they are doing today, so you can make it better, you can move forward. But what happens, the reason why that happens in corporates, a lot of people you'll find that act like that have been with the company for a very long time. It's crucial little number. And then when you come as an outsider or try to tell them different, try to implement something, try to change processes, what happens there? You create a fear for them, for their jobs. And actually, to add to that, often certainly as a business consultant or business analyst, one of the questions that we often get asked in interviews, how do you deal with difficult stakeholders? I don't believe there's a difficult stakeholder. Why? Because there is a reason behind it, and I think that's one example. If people fear for the job, if fear, what are you here to do, that it's going to take something away from them, they will act like that. Protection comes at the front and it becomes barrier, but actually taking them away from their usual environment, from that thinking, and spending time to understand why are they acting like that, pays in the long run. And that's the best way for actually negotiating and influencing them and bringing them on your side, listening to and trying to identify why they are acting the way they are. Yes?
I want to do more practical stuff, like what is the best way to keep track of the processes and updating those processes as some problems come with the business.
It depends. What type of processes do you mean? Processes, operating model processes, or
maybe some client wants something custom with the project, with the product, and there's a problem. We don't know how to do that, and we need to adapt. So
I guess it depends how you operate and how you work. I mean, typically, I would say you would have a shared folder somewhere. I mean, you would have, I don't know, Google Drive, SharePoint, or somewhere, and you keep those documents that are actually live documents. And when I say documents, I don't mean it's a 200 page. I mean, it needs to be something that's meaningful. It could be slide. When I say documents, I even mean slides. Keeping something simple. That's on a small scale. What happens in big corporations, you actually have systems who do that for you. You have architectural, enterprise architectural softwares that do that, and they connect processes. They together they find interdependencies. If you change one process, it automatically changes another, and that's something. It depends. What do you mean by process? And how big of a scale it is. But I think, for me, I don't think there is a rocket science to it. I think it's just simply, keeping the version control if required, and keeping, track of things, and actually, also making sure that it's not your responsibility or one person's responsibility to update that, to keep it up to date, or to add information to it. It's team's responsibility.
I wanted to ask if there may be a problem, like, I don't know if I got it wrong, but is there maybe a problem giving too much clarity, or is it the more the better?
It could be. Can you give me an example?
Let's say example with Alan, like bringing 2 beers. Maybe next time, since he got it wrong, next time he will think, there's more people coming, I should bring more beer, He will kind of start thinking on his own more, if you know what I mean. Or he can be more creative and come up with a solution on his own, let's say, which is...
And you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. Alan, I don't think he's going to make that same mistakes again.
Yeah.
Because because he's learned from that. Yeah. But that's exactly it. You first time round, you didn't create clarity, or Tony didn't create clarity by how he articulated what he wanted Alan to do. Second time, he did.
Yeah.
But next time, I think Alan will definitely remember that. So it's creating clarity, so it's not too much clarity. Yeah. And also Tony may click and say, okay, I could have maybe said, can you bring the box of the beers?
You say that too much clarity kills creativity.
Yeah, that's what I
I've
was
heard that. I've seen it. I don't know. Does it? Does anybody have examples of it where it does? What do you mean by creativity?
They're more chaotic, but it's hard to create some new value out of, clarity. It's just, chaos needs to be there in some ways to create new value.
Maybe if I can include, so we're confusing at this time for smaller teams clarity and rules. I mean, clarity is really good. It's not going to kill creativity, but maybe there's too many rules that are set in stone, and then every time I have an idea for a project or something, then I have to go, for example, to Tony, which I don't have to do every time, but for us it's a good because it's really fast-paced, a lot of jobs, and a lot of people are doing many things, and then you always don't have time for to go and ask, is this by the book, can we do that? It's just a little bit more wiggle room there. So I wanted to ask, what's the biggest from your experience, and you work with smaller teams as well, obviously you can implement some stuff from the bigger teams as well. What's one the pet peeve, the biggest issue for smaller teams? Is it that there's not enough rules or too many rules? What do you see for example in Split?
Yeah. I think I wouldn't even say that there is not enough rules. What I've come across that there is no rules. Rules is such a strong word. I don't think. I think there is. Sometimes I think there's no rules whatsoever. I think it's free for all. But I do believe that that's good. That's good when it's 2-3 people. But the more you scale, the more you grow, it becomes more difficult than to manage to not having any rules. Also, what becomes difficult, if you're used to 2-3 people, You know, have your own space of working. You don't have standard working hours. You come to the office whenever you can. That's fine. But you'll grow. You'll have more and more people, and that will just create mess for other people that are coming, and especially people who haven't worked before. They're going to think that's okay. And worst, you know, when we employ or when we work with people that is their first job, we are like teachers. It's really our responsibility to get them ready to move to bigger and better jobs. So, I mean, in some instances, I'm sure too much clarity can kill creativity. But even that, you know, creativity, I've heard so many times, even to me, I've had my leaders, my bosses, or were saying to me, oh, I need you to be more creative. I need you to come up with initiatives. So what does that mean? But what does that mean? It's true. You know, I mean, I need some sort of clarity. I mean, initiative around what? Would you want me to create a new culture program? Do you want me to create a new go-to-market strategy? I mean, do you want me to create new departments? I can be creative. And also, what happens with that if you don't provide clarity? You know, if you don't get clarity in those type of things, me as an employee, I'll go away, I'll think, oh, I have this great idea. I'll go initiate and start it, and then I'll go, dear boss, I was very creative today. I've come up with this initiative. Here it is. And boss goes, nah, that's not going to work in our company. That's not what I need, what I meant about creativity or initiative. I needed something different. And what does that do? Demotivates the person. Yes, Tony?
Some things that you learned in Scotland, like cultural-wise and business sense, like that we can apply, like here in Croatia. I think there are some key differences in the way people are like building their companies or something similar.
Difficult question. Here's an honest answer. I couldn't wait to come here, seriously, to home, to go away from this UK way of thinking or UK way of working. Wrapping up everything in a big bow, all the nice talk, however, but please, can you help me? I wanted to work in directness with honesty and just knowing where I am. So I came here, I'm thinking, great, because actually I've worked with quite a lot different European countries, never with Croatians, and that's what I got, you know, is directness, you know exactly where you stand, you get clarity with them. And I came here thinking exactly the same. Did I get it? No. And actually, it happened that in my current job, I had an opportunity to work with colleagues from our London office, and Branka picked up again. I actually realized, no, I am missing working with that. Why? Because I think I feel it's difficult actually saying this, but it does feel just more professional. But maybe that's not down to difference between Croatia and UK. Maybe it's me, maybe because it's how I'm used to working and the companies that I'm used to working. Alan, you may have something to add to that as well. What's yours?
Your success in Scotland and UK was actually based on your directness and honesty. So when Branka would be in a meeting, she'd effectively just say, as is, it's black and white. Because there is a habit in the UK where we will try and dress something up, have a conversation. It's flowery language, it sounds amazing. And then, you know, from your perspective, your directness actually was a strength, because you would then state, well, actually, that's not going to work because of this. You know, that's bullshit. You know, you have to think about X, Y, and Z. terms of, well, how does that work then for you here based on Tony's question in terms of what you learn from Scotland that you can then bring to here, and then vice versa, how would things work that you took from the UK for here? My point to that is basically there is some rigidity or being rigid in the UK, but for a reason. We have no rules.
We stand in a queue.
A queue is a good example. I said to Tony, like when I first learned to drive here, it wasn't about going, fuck, everyone's really shit at driving. It was more about, I actually need to adapt to the situation, because basically from my perspective, I needed to learn, I needed to understand why are people, doing what we're doing here, to then get a clearer understanding of,
Yeah.
right, okay, I get it, because we were taught a certain way, it was taught differently, and how we might have
Yeah.
taught, in the UK as well.
It's hard. It's a very good question, actually, Tony. But it's really hard to answer. For me, I feel something's missing. Maybe it's companies that I worked for. Maybe because I've built career over there and it got me to some sort of level. Maybe it's because I not losing control, but I'm not working at that level anymore. Maybe I don't have the variety of the projects. For me, here, one example was different. 2 different companies I worked for in Croatia while I'm here. I mean, none of them are Croatian companies, but I mean, they're based here, they have offices. I've been on one project only for me. I can't cope with that because I never had a luxury of working on one project. I never had a luxury of having 2, 3 business analysts on a project. I was only one. I was also, didn't have UX designer either. I mean, I was leading workshops. I was helping developers understand the business context. I was doing mock-ups, making up screens, leading the team. I was doing testing. I was creating test scripts. Maybe that's what I'm missing here. Maybe I feel I'm not utilized enough. And that creates frustration with me. But in that question, when I'm saying to you it's a good question, in a way, I don't like it because I'll tell you why. I think one reason why no me did, but why I protect Croatia since we came back about all of this chat that, it's bureaucratic, you can't get everything done, you have to wait for everything, you need to have visa to get things done. Alan's and mine experience, without word of lie. We've bought flat. I had some serious health issues to deal with. We sorted Alan's permit with normal time frames, with no one bayadera, with not one envelope, with not one visa anywhere. So, but I think, in comparison, the reason I'm saying that is that what happens, I think, I don't want to be a person or diaspora that come back here and says, it was so much better over there. You don't do things as well here. It's better over there. I don't like that. And I think going away from that, and that's why even in work, I'm trying not to compare things too much or to say, well, that's better or that's better. Everything has its pros and cons or benefits or disbenefits. You have to adapt, in every environment that you are and just take good with the bad. I know.
You asked the question on the dark side of corporate. The dark side of corporate, if I give an example for me, was I worked in the finance industry, Prudential, large insurance company. I worked there 7 years, pension administrator. I hated it with passion, purely because Branka and I are different. I don't like rigid environments. I don't like that full control, not being able to terms of, I've worked for small businesses as well, still work for a small business today. You know, I've experienced having my own business also. And that part where you talked about creativity and freedom actually came from working in the smaller businesses than it did when I worked with the large corporates. Like Branka, I worked at university, you know, as well, experienced, you know, that side, trying to understand. It was all about processes. It was very clear on, it was great for employment rights. You can understand exactly what you were getting, etc. And you know, from that perspective, you know, that's where I'm different probably to you as well in terms of, you know, I'm probably less about process.
Alan doesn't like to be told what to do. I think that's where the difference is. I do. I don't mind. But I think it is a personality thing though as well, and you know, what are you looking for? I don't think it's fair to assume that you know, when you work in a smaller company, smaller teams, that you can be more creative. It's looking for the opportunities and right moment. You know, it just depends who you're working with and what's leadership like a team.
In your experience for smaller teams, are there more problems for HR questions or operational questions? Like where do employers need more systematization and more rule-based tasks and stuff like that?
In smaller.
In smaller teams.
Yeah.
Is it HR questions like what do people expect? Come to this, don't come to that. This is the culture. Come at this hour and stuff like that. And operational systems. Where's the bigger issue? Because as an employee, I know my experience, but you have maybe some rules.
Yeah, I would be curious to hear what you say.
No.
Well, or anybody else actually. I'd be curious what other people think. I think it's a mixture of both. I mean, HR thinks, I think HR is quite sometimes a strong word also. I'm not a big lover of HR because in my experience, HR was always on a company side, not a people side, even though it should be protecting people. I haven't had that experience, but people, you know, leadership and all these things, and learning and development, you know, that's more, it's a kind of stream of HR, but it's more focusing on people. So I would say mixture things, but, you know, I often hear, the words I hear around, say, split area from the, you know, company owners or people or employees of those smaller agencies and companies is complaining. And I know you will say that's just culture, that's just how we are in Croatia and how we are in Split. I don't buy for that. Žuganje. I don't buy that it's culture, I don't buy that it's Split. Trust me. Scotland is the most moaning and complaining nation I have ever met and worked for. They complain about everything. So it's not that. I think it comes from that complaining, this is not good, that because people don't have enough clarity. You know, if you have a company, you need to create some sort of foundations and some rules for people. Otherwise, people get lost and just, you know, create their own little things. And like I said, when you grow, you know, as a leader or as a manager of people or a company owner or even employee, you'll get pissed off eventually because you'll just think, I mean, I feel I'm doing all I can for this company and for my team. You know, I take them on trips, I pay them well, they've got flexibility, they don't have to come to the office all the time. You know, I'm pretty flexible, easygoing. But easygoing doesn't always mean nice, and it's not always a good thing. You know, some people, there needs to be some sort of rules, and people, you know, need that foundation or a framework to work around, so they understand, you know, when can they ask for flexibility and when not. Otherwise, you know, for example, salaries. I mean, if you don't have some, you know, some sort of process for salary reviews, like normally, from what I know, it's once a year salary. then people will come to you every second month or every month saying, well, I'm not happy with this. I want more. But if you say to them, we are doing salary reviews every year in November, that's when you're going to have those discussions. They may still come and ask you, but I think they will be unlikely to do that because they know there's a process for that. And they'll wait, and maybe they'll spend time collating the evidence why they should be giving a salary increase. Does anybody else actually be interesting to hear other views on that? I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think companies need some sort of rules or processes or instructions how to behave inside or outside of the organization? What do you think?
Absolutely. As you grow, you need to process.
And that's the thing, as you grow. But if you don't create that while you're still small, it will be very difficult to change that as you grow. It will be easy maybe to change it if you get new employees, new people. But changing the minds of your team today, when you're 5, and changing the way you operate, changing, for example, even just asking people to come in office 5 days a week. I wish somebody would ask me to come to the office 5 days a week. I would be happy. It'll be a really difficult thing to do because people are just so used to having that flexibility, and without understanding the reasoning for it. And I'll sometimes hear people here as well, complaining that they have to go to work. They have from Kaštela to Split. Even Alan will sometimes say that, that's Solin, Širina, or whatever it's called, it takes forever to get in. So in my mind, okay, so what? Yes, it's busy, it's traffic, but you kind of want to work. Hope you need to work, and it's a normal thing that you actually need to do that. I give examples. There's no comparison. People in London and wherever, bigger cities, even Zagreb, they probably spend 2 hours commuting just one way. And that's just every day. It does suck. It's not great, but in a way, that's a normal part of working life. But what's great, and now we have that.
Personally, I disagree completely. That's not a normal way of working life. That's what we have been forced to do.
Yeah.
We've been told to do, and that's not a normal thing. Let's do far aside.
That's, huh? I don't know. I think that to some extent it is. I personally think that remote work is great. It helped me enormously. But maybe I think differently because I didn't know any other way. There's another example of corporates. I had all the flexibility in the world. Always had flexible working time. If I stayed longer, I would be clocking hours, then I can take later on, if I was working overtime, I knew I would get paid for overtime, or I will get time back. I had opportunity to, work from home whenever I needed to. I was reducing my hours or condensing my hours so I can sometimes pick up my daughter from school, so she's not crying to me and saying, "Mommy, why does everybody else get picked up from school and I'm just being told to wait at the dance classes or somewhere or somebody else is picking you up." But maybe the reason I had that, maybe it's not because of the rules or because whether it's corporate or not. It's because I created trust with the people that I was working with. They knew that they can rely on me, that regardless, if something needs done, I'll do it regardless of the time or whether I'm home in the office. And coming back on that office thing, you're going to hate me. Many people maybe will. I think that being in isolation, sometimes at home, kills creativity more than clarity.